Please welcome dynamic duo John Kirsch and David Helms. Today, they will be showcasing premiering content in their session, Dynamics GP Reporting Usage and Personalization. Please stick around after John and David's session for a live Q&A.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here at DynamicsCon for our GP session. My name is John Kirsch. I'm the GP product lead at SA Global, and I've got David Helms here joining me, also a senior consultant with me at SA Global. You're joining us for the Dynamics GP Reporting Usage and Personalization session. First off, we want to thank DynamicsCon for letting us be a part of this conference, and also for everybody that voted for us. Thank you so much for voting. It's great to always see everyone get to be involved and pick the sessions, and we're so excited to be able to help share this information with you today. For those that didn't vote for us, we're glad you attended the session. Hopefully next time around, be sure to pop in there, vote, and be a part of the selection process as well. So it's really a cool process overall. So we're going to start out here. We're going to, again, cover GP reports, all the options that kind of come with GP, and we'll touch on a few other peripheral things with it as well. So we're excited to share that. To get us started with introductions, my name is John Kirsch. Again, I'm the GP product lead. I've been working with GP for 20 plus years. I think it just turned 24. So I've worked with a number of companies in some different roles that have had GP. And then also have been a consultant for a number of years now too. So some of my history there is listed. So I've worked on the IT side. I've also worked on the accounting side over time. So I've used GP both from the functional and from the kind of technical support side in roles within the company using it. I also like to share a little bit of other information too. So I do have a family with 5 kids, so keeps my wife and I very busy. Our hobbies are generally what we do with our kids for the most part. You can see contact information there too. Happy to kind of always share with the community. If you have questions about the presentation after, want to get some information about what we talked about, please feel free to reach out. And one other piece on the bottom there, I am the vice president at Golden House, which is a domestic violence shelter and advocacy program here in Brown County in the Green Bay area in Wisconsin. And I always like to kind of put a plug in there. It's not a nonprofit that's always fun to talk about with domestic violence, but one that typically is in a pretty high need. So whatever the local program is, always great to show some support and be there for those that have needs. Last I'll mention over on the right side, a plug for DynamicsCon overall. I will be a part of the live session coming up. So really excited to be in Scottsdale coming up in May. So if you haven't checked that out, I'd love to see people and connect with everyone in Scottsdale. So with that, I'll let Dave go ahead and do an introduction of himself here.
All right. Hi, folks. My name is David Helms, and I am a licensed CPA. My friends, I like to tell them that I'm a recovering accountant because I'm not in accounting per se anymore, but I spent most of my career in it. So I began my career in public accounting, but I quickly realized that I didn't like being on the other side of the table from the clients as an auditor. So I jumped into industry. And I've worked in telecom, transportation, and most recently real estate. I spent a good bit of time there, but now I made the jump over from end user of GP into consulting. I've been using GP since 1999, so I have grown with it for 20 some years. So I think I initially implemented GP version 8. So that was a long time ago. So the product has grown over the years, and I think it just continues to get better. So I'm also a father. I have 2 grown daughters who are now out of the house. And so I've got a little bit more time for myself than I think John does. So anyway, all right. So let's get started here. All right. As you know, there's a lot of data in GP. Your entire company's history is likely somewhere locked in those SQL tables. So what we're going to try to do today is we're going to see how we can get that data out of GP, and we're going to try to get it in the format that you need it. Okay, so in keeping with the DynamicsCon theme, there are a few superhero tools that you can use here. So we're going to be talking about 6 of them today: Smart List, Excel Refreshable Reports, Management Reporter, SSRS, Report Writer, and Power BI. I'm going to take the first 3, and then John will take the remaining 3. All right. So let's get started with Smart Lists. Okay. Now, they absolutely will make you look smart. So if your company is not using Smart Lists now, I would encourage you to spend some time looking at the product. You already own it, and it is very, very efficient. Okay, so you already own it, and I want to just start off by talking about when you first open Smart List over here on the right side of the screen, you'll see that there's all these folders, and under these folders are a bunch of reports that have already been pre-written for you. Okay, but they're arranged in the same order as your modules. Okay, you should be familiar with the modules that you're using in GP: financial, sales, purchasing. Well, the corresponding reports to those modules are going to be in those folders over here in Smart Lists. All right, so let's go ahead and let's jump right into GP, and let's take a look at what Smart Lists actually looks like. Okay, so to launch Smart Lists, the first thing you're going to want to do is you can either click on it from this icon right here, or you can go up to the Dynamics GP button and choose Smart Lists from here. Okay, all right, here we go. Now, here's that navigation pane. It's organized by module that we talked about, and let's look at let's open up the financial module. Now, I just want to make a clear distinction that this account summary and account transactions, these each have reports underneath them, but I want you to understand that the account summary is equal, or it mimics this summary inquiry window here. Okay, so it's just a summary of all the transactions that happened during a particular period. The account transactions window, however, it mimics this detail inquiry window, and I'm sure you have all been in there. So this is all the transactions individually that happened during a particular period. So let's open up the account transactions window, and you can see that we've got some reports already written here with the stars. Those are the ones that Microsoft has written for you, but the star one by itself, that's your default. Okay, so now it is going through and it is pulling all the account transactions since the beginning of time, because we haven't applied any filters here. And you'll see that it pulled back 1,000 accounts, right? Well, we don't need to see stuff that happened in every single period. So we need to cull the data down a little bit. So let's come on over here to the search button, okay? And then we're going to apply some filters down here. Let's say that we only want to look at transactions that were during January of 2028, because this is sample data. So we can, transaction date is between 01/01/2028 and 01/31/2028. Okay, and now let's say okay. Now it should pull back only the transactions that are within January of 28. Okay, and it pulled back 318 records. All right. Well, let's say, for instance, that you wanted to look at all of the account numbers that start with 4. Okay. For whatever reason, you're doing some account inquiry work, you want to look at anything that starts with 4. Well, if you click on the account number, everything starts with the division here is the zeros. Okay, and then you don't even get to a 4. And what we're actually looking for is your main account segments that start with 4. Okay, so that column's not on here. So how do I get it on here? Let me show you. Okay, you come over here to this icon right here, you say columns, and this shows you the columns that are currently on the report. But if you click on this add button down here, it brings up a whole bunch of different fields that you can pull onto the report. Now, I happen to know that what we're looking for is the main account segment. All right. So you can highlight that, say OK, and you see it shows up at the bottom here. Well, let's click on that and let's move it up a little bit so that it shows right after the account number, and let's say OK. So now you can see we've got the main account segment. All right. Well, remember, we're trying to only find the account numbers that start with 4. So let's go back to our search button. Okay. And now let's come here to your search definition number 2. Main account segment begins with 4. Okay. And we're going to say, okay. Now, well, we got nothing that begins with 4. So let's try something that begins with 5. There we go. All right. So apparently all of our payroll accounts begin with 5, and you'll see it brought back 145 transactions. Well, that's great. So now I can see that everything that the main account segment begins with 5 is included in this report. Well, that's all fine and good, but I can look at it on my screen. But how am I going to show it to somebody else? Okay, well, it's real easy. All you have to do is you hit Excel right there, and it is going to automatically push your entire report over to Excel. And there it is. That's exactly what you just saw on your screen. Now you'll notice that everything your debit and credit amounts come out with 5 decimal points. That's because GP uses extra decimal points if you're using multi-currency, but you're not here. So let's go ahead and click the comma format style, and there you have it. Okay, this is just Excel, folks. You can add a column here like net, and that's equals your debit minus your credit. Okay, and then you can fill that down. Just Excel. You can use this for your VLOOKUPs and for your if you wanted to do a pivot table, which are not scary. If you spend a little time with pivot tables, you realize how useful they are, and they're not that difficult. Okay, so that's how you get stuff to Excel. But let's go back into Smart List. Same report here. Okay, I don't want to have to go through and add the main segment, and I don't want to have to put the filter on for the dates again. So I want to save this report the way it is. Well, I wish it was a little bit more intuitive to save these Smart List reports, but it's not. But so the way you do save the reports in Smart List is you come up here to the favorites button, okay? And you create a favorite report. All right, so it's going to bring up this window, and you're going to give it a unique title, Dave's List, okay? And it can be available to the system, a specific company, or a specific user ID. I generally leave it to the system. That means everybody in the system can see your report. You can put a password on it. That would be important if you wanted to have some payroll information. So then you come down here and you say add. You can either just add it as a favorite, or you can add a favorite and a reminder. If you do the favorite and the reminder, it's going to bring up this little box here, and it will give you some options for it to remind you. Okay, let's say if you have more than 10,000 records in here, okay, you can and say, okay, the next time this particular report gets 10,000 records, you're going to be notified and you can look at it. Okay, so that particular feature is useful if you have something like unapplied documents. And if you have unapplied documents are greater than 0, then you'll get a reminder that you need to look at that, and then you can pull those documents up and you can get them applied. All right, so that's pretty much the gist of Smart Lists. Okay, but there's a lot of really great Smart Lists in here. Okay, but the downfall of Smart Lists is that you have to have a GP license or user ID to get in here and use them. Okay, the only way you can share this data is if you export it to Excel and then you email it to somebody. Well, that's not always the most efficient way to get stuff out into the hands of the people that need it. Okay, for instance, You may have some folks that in your sales department that they need to see some sales data, but you don't want to have to run a report for them every day. So let's just zip through some of these folders here. This is what we just went through. Okay, but now we're going to get to Excel refreshable reports, which is how you can put data out for people to come and grab themselves. All right. So the thing about Excel refreshable reports is you have to deploy them. They're not automatically deployed. It's very easy to deploy them. All you have to do is you go into Dynamics GP Tools Setup, Setup Reporting Tools Setup, and then hit this Excel Reports tab here. Say that you wanted to save these reports to a network share, and you tell it where to save it to, hit Deploy Reports, and then boom, you get folders out on your network that here again, they're designed by, or they're organized by module, but they essentially have almost the same standard smart lists within each of those folders. So let's go out there and let's take a look at some of those. Okay, so here we go. Here's that. Here's your, let's go into the financial folder. And now look, we've still got the account summary defaults. Okay, double click on that and it brings this right up. And so here is the summary of all the transactions that happened in all these periods. Now, these are all the periods. And did you notice how fast that went? Okay, that just pulled 1,500 records. All right, so, and you can automatically filter this stuff down. So we close that. Let's go back to here. If we go to the account transactions default, open that up. Okay, here we go. And that pulled back 22,000 records. How about that? So the Excel refreshable reports are much faster and they run a lot quicker than the smart list reports. So keep that in mind. And you can save them out. They're out there on your network and people can come out and they can just grab whatever information that they need. So if your salespeople need to see sales reports or sales information, it's out there. Keep in mind, though, that you need to be aware of if you put any payroll data out there, you're going to have to make sure that you manage security to the folder where those reports are deployed. Okay, so don't forget about that. Now, included in the PowerPoint are some of my other favorite reports, but I'll just show you a couple of them right quick. So fixed assets, you can look at real quickly all your fixed assets that show up. Okay. This is really nice. So you could do acquisition date of a particular year. How many times do your auditors ask you what were your fixed asset additions for the year? Well, boom, it's right here. Okay, easy enough. Let's see. And then another one that I really like is sales module. There is customer address default. Okay, open this up, and there you go. You've got all your customer numbers, your customer names. You could take this and you could put it in a mail merge document, and you could notify your customers about whatever you want to tell them. Okay, so really good stuff, and it's really quick, and it's in the hands of people that need it, and they don't have to come to the accounting department and ask for it. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. We've talked about this. Here's the list of my favorite refreshable reports. Take a look at those. And so now let's talk about Management Reporter. Okay, Management Reporter is a tried and true reporting tool. It's extremely flexible. So, and it uses a combination of rows, columns, and trees. So if you're thinking about a financial report that you're trying to get out of the system, think about a piece of paper. Okay, what do you want on the rows that go across horizontally? What do you want on the columns that go up and down? And then the trees is how do you want to slice your information? Like if your company is made up of different departments, do you want a financial statement by department that rolls up into the top or not? But you would do that with trees. Okay, so let's quickly look at these. The row definitions right here. This is where you can see on column B. This is are your descriptions of what you want. Okay, and then over here in column K, this is saying that, okay, on this particular line, I want any GL accounts that have the account category of cash, return those. Same for accounts receivable, okay? And it'll return accounts receivable. So that's a row format. The management reported column format, you see the first column that you're going to have is going to be your description, okay, that's pulling from the row format. And then these other columns are what related information about those accounts you want to pull back. So this is going to be your actual, not your budget report, your budget figures, and then your fiscal year, fiscal period are your bases, okay? Oops. All right, and then here is your tree format. So your tree format, this is where you slice and dice your company, and it's based on the dimensions of that are defined in your general ledger chart of accounts. Okay, so for this particular level for Department 2 is anything that has the department level 02, Department 1, 01, okay, and then these two will roll up to the summary of all units. So now, how do you put them all together? Okay, this is the management reporter report definition screen, and this is where you use those building blocks of the rows, the columns, and the trees. You use those combinations of those definitions that you used before. You choose your period, your base period, and your base year, and then all you do is you hit generate, and it will produce your financial statement for you. So that's a quick overview of management reporter. Once again, there's a lot of other reporting options out there, but MR is definitely tried and true, and I like it. So, all right. And with that, we are going to turn it over to John, and he will take you through the other three report writers. Okay.
All right, Dave, thanks for that. Thanks for all the good information there. So we've covered Smart List and Excel reports so far. So we've got the kind of list reporting going on inside and outside GP, and then financial reports covered with Management Reporter. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about Report Writer and Word templates. So everybody that's using GP, you've probably been using these. So I'm going to talk a little bit, maybe a couple of tips and tricks type of situation here to think about. So Report Writer, just in case that name isn't familiar, it's really those standard GP reports. So it's your posting journals, it's your trial balance. If you're not using Word templates, which we'll mention here, it's also your forms, your purchase orders, your sales order processing, etc. So everybody's using those inside of GP. But I want to point out a couple of things here. And the first one there on the second point is really, for the most part, these are pretty easily modified. So what I mean by that is if something's not quite right, if you're missing a field, if you don't have all of your aging buckets on a report, if you're kind of missing something, don't just make it work. It's pretty easy. If you're not familiar with it, your partner or somebody on a message board or something like that can probably help answer with a couple of questions on how to put that in place. So again, pretty easy to make those changes, and definitely recommend to get that working the way you need it to, rather than kind of making it work. So I have a list there, often modified reports. You may not even know this if you've been using GP a while, but usually your check formats to get those to align to the form properly are modified a little bit to move things around. AP and AR trial balance, like I mentioned, you might have more aging buckets than the default of GP, or maybe less. And so a lot of times those get changed. Trial balance and purchase order, sales order processing to get all of your information for your customers or for your vendors often are changed. So some of those, again, have been changed behind the scenes. You maybe don't even know it, but just keep that in mind if something's not quite right. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit about editing the trial balance here as kind of a tip and trick. And I've shared this recently, and a lot of folks have found this helpful if you haven't done this before. And it's a pretty easy kind of change and fix to make here. So we're going to talk about this trial balance and how do we make that really usable in Excel. So if you're familiar with this, you probably have run this a lot, multiple times every month end. But you go into trial balance under your financial reports, and I have this one called demo, which I'm going to hit modify here. And you probably pick a spot where you save your trial balance to somewhere on your network or your C drive or something like that. And so I already have that opened up here. I ran it ahead of time, just right from the default. And you're probably familiar with these steps if you've done this, but you kind of expand the columns. And then you have all of these headers that you come in and you go delete, and then you scroll down and then you go delete again. And you do that to remove all these extra rows out of here. And again, doing that multiple times every month might get a little bit redundant. Other people I've seen sort first and then delete them, but either way, you're going through a bunch of steps to do that. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to go ahead and just print this one to the screen, and I'll show you how quick I can remove some of those headers and kind of make this change here. So I am going to kind of cheat a little bit, if you will, because I already have my security set up if you haven't done this before. But I'm going to print to the screen, hit modify. I'm not going to save my report options. And what it's going to do is open up in a report writer here. And within this window, it goes all the way to the screen where it has the layout here. And what we're getting with that is this page header section up on the top here. This is showing up repeatedly for every single page it would normally print out. So if I go to tools and section options, I don't want that anymore. I'm going to turn my page header off, watch it up on the top here, and say, okay, it disappeared. We now just have the report header. I'm going to say okay and close out of here and save it and go all the way back into Microsoft GP. Now, while this is loading back up, I will mention, if you're using shared reports dictionaries, if that's familiar with you, we do want to be a little careful with making these changes. We want everybody out of GP so we don't cause any problems with that reporting dictionary. Again, if you have an admin, if you're not familiar with that, your GP admin will be able to kind of help and explain that and make sure that that's working for you. But now with that very simple change, you would go about the same exact process. So I'd go financial reports, pick my location to run the report. And I'm going to do that as soon as this loads up here. But I actually printed this ahead of time. And now you can see this is how it would load up. But now instead, if I expand these, instead of as we scroll down and had all those rows to break, you can see they're all gone. So if I get all the way to the bottom, I still have my totals that maybe I take those off because I'm just going to hit delete. And now I'm going to total my column up and hit enter. And, obviously we want a balanced report here, but you could see that I will have no more deleting rows and having to go through that steps, numerous times throughout the closing process or when you run your financial reports. So just to go back and show you that, the one thing about it is if you do print this report kind of from the copy that is directly in GP, we are not going to have those page headers on the top of like the second and third page here. So you can see as that opens here, resizes a little bit on my screen. So we're on page 1 here. You can kind of see down towards the bottom, page 2 down here. It just starts right away with the next accounts. So it is something to be aware of, that only that first page is going to have that heading. But again, I see a lot of folks just only print that to Excel. And when you do that, this will save you all those extra steps that are in there. So with that, I'm going to keep moving along here. Again, a little bit of information in the slides about doing that. And I do want to mention about Word templates in here. So if you haven't been using Word templates, if you've been using kind of those same looking windowed reports inside of GP, then you're using those report writer ones. And the advantage of Word templates, really a couple of pieces. One, they're graphical. They just look a little bit better, look more current. So you can get kind of a better look and feel out of those. We can also assign those a little bit differently. So a certain ID, like customer ID or group of customers or class, we can have one format and then invoices in another format per se, if we're talking about customers. We can also do logos, so we can have the exact same format if you have multiple GP companies. Just upload the logo differently for each company, and we don't have to modify that report or use a different type of report, some of the things we've had to do in the past. But the big thing to me is that this is where the direct emailing feature kicks in for GP. A little note about that, if you are using Office 365, we want to be on the latest release of GP so that the MFA, the multi-factor authentication, is working and we don't have any glitches or anything with that. So I will just show this quickly with sales. And so I'm going to pop open an invoice here. And when I grab that, I will say I just uploaded one logo, you'll see, and these are all the default templates here. And I'm going to actually use a quick kind of tip here. I'm going to use my Control Q, which is the quick print functionality that I like in the sales order processing window. So if you're not familiar with that, have a quick search for that and look it up. But that automatically will print a couple of forms for me. And you see that opening up in Word, which are these Word templates. While that's opening, you also see the email button. These exact templates can be emailed even as a PDF. It's going to open as Word here, but those could go out as a PDF or a couple of other formats as well. So, you can take advantage of the email featuring right from the window. But you can see I actually use the DynamicsCon icon here for my logo for this company right now. But you can see here, this is, again, the unedited format. We certainly can change fields and even some colors and look and feel to this too. But that's the Word template. Certainly, again, much more graphical and giving us a lot more options to be able to make the changes. So you can see that's the packing slip. I'll close that instance of Word out, and I'll pop this one open. And you can see here we've got the invoice too. Again, same logo, pops onto the corner of the screen, and we've got that kind of same look and feel here. So if you have been using those kind of standard GP ones and you want to migrate over, there is a little bit of setup to do that. But again, especially if you're looking to start emailing or email more efficiently, whether this be purchase orders, sales orders, or other documents related to sales, and really pretty much any document is available that way now. So, but it really typically those external facing documents are really nice to use there. Okay, so that's kind of report writer and the Word templates. I'm going to switch over and talk about Power BI a little bit. And so one of probably the newer tools out there, from my experience, I would say a majority of the clients that I work with have not used or are not using Power BI in their environment. So this might be newer to a lot of folks, or maybe you've seen this on other presentations and just haven't started yet. If you haven't, KPIs and dashboards are really what the target are, really graphical reports, easy to understand. And the key thing with GP here that I like to point out, GP being an on-prem solution, is we do have this direct SQL connection where we can use this right inside of GP, or I'm sorry, right in your network. And so pulling right from SQL. And so with that, if you're familiar with that setup, basically we can refresh that as many times as you want. You're getting basically real-time reporting of what's in the GP database. So that's kind of one way of using it, of using the desktop version of Power BI. And then we can use the service side of it, which is really it being hosted, your data being uploaded into the cloud. And typically that's kind of on an hourly refresh. And the advantage though is it's available anywhere you have an internet connection. It does take a little bit of a subscription, but still really low cost and efficient. So a couple ways to do this and use Power BI, but it's key to understand what's out there. The end result is, once you have these views set up, it's really easy for users to filter, to be able to kind of customize it for themselves and save their own options out there for those dashboards. And again, a relatively low cost, especially for the power that's in the tool here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this open. We're just going to do a real quick walkthrough of what this looks like. This is actually the GP content pack. So if you search for that online, you'd be able to find that. And this is a downloadable. There's instructions out there on the Microsoft blogs on how to connect this. And you can go ahead and use this and connect it to your data. Now, it probably needs some tweaking. This one's connected to the Fabricam sample company. So not the best data necessarily to look at. We wouldn't want some negative net income in a couple of these years here, but you can kind of get a good look and feel. And I do want to point out a couple of things. So I mentioned, if you use this, I can literally use this filter on the right-hand side here. I mark it. I marked a certain day. There isn't much data on that one day. You can see there was one debit. Looks like cost of goods sold transaction there. So we'll take that one back off. But we can add filters in here, and you can see it's reactive for the whole page. So that's one of the really cool things to see here. And I do want to point out just one other kind of quick thing. We have some filters over on the side. I'm not going to get into too much of those, but even changing, some of these visualizations can be very easy. So these are the built-in ones. I just click to change it over to a pie chart instead. But you can certainly kind of switch these very quickly, and there's a ton of visualizations. Easy for me to say, right? But we can download. Some are, with a small fee. Some are free out on the internet to be able to get some, even more kind of fancier, advanced visualizations out there. So again, this content pack, just to do a quick walkthrough of it, we have, we have one that's based on sales here. So we're seeing some kind of customer and salesperson information. I've got my map that's not loading for some reason, but that's okay. I'll switch over to the purchasing side here. Again, vendors, current balance, outstanding POs. So really kind of looking at the purchasing side. And then this one also has an inventory. So I can look at down here in the lower left, kind of more of a list here, but these are items to be ordered. So we're kind of doing, a bit of MRP type planning here, or min-max planning at least. A count of those items. And again, just kind of some of the usage pieces here as well. So a good visualization again in this content pack is a good way to get started if you haven't used it before, of trying to be able to get in there and learn a little bit about what's available and kind of a starting point. So check that out, that GP content pack. And then lastly here, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the SQL Server reporting services, or SSRS if you've heard that term. So you saw the similar screen when Dave was presenting earlier. He was on the Excel reports tab here. We can deploy these together, but reporting services also need to be deployed. And so we do need a server set up for that in the path. I do have a quick tip here. This can go throughout GP, but I have an alias here called DynGP. If you do that DNS entry, it makes it really easy if you're moving servers down the road to be able to reference that alias rather than the server name. But most people have that server name in here. And so that's deploying to, in this instance, a default kind of instance of SSRS. And we deploy those reports out. And it really, again, across modules, kind of like the Excel reports that Dave was showing, gives you a lot of options out there. So this, as well as Excel, allows you to pull data when you're not in GP. So that doesn't require that GP license. So that's a nice to have. Different than the Excel default ones, these are a bit more graphical, or can be. So a little bit easier to have charts and tables. You can certainly add those to your Excel ones. But this one kind of gives you that kind of pre-built for a few of them. It also is exportable to Excel. Filters, I'll show you kind of one or two options here. And then, you can kind of set these up very simple or very complex if you need to. All right, so I switch it over into my SSRS window in the web browser. And so you see here, like I mentioned, I do have my tests in 2 companies. So this is split by companies and then within those by modules. But I'm just going to pop one report open as we're close to wrapping up here. And I created this custom one. So this shows how simple one of these can be, just a list of open orders in the system. So just by clicking on it, I can see it here. Again, I can do those exports that I talked about, print it. But the key here is I can run this. I don't have to be in GP. Really easy to do that. And with that, the one other piece within GP, though, I'm not going to show that in the window, but I do have the reporting services report over in the navigation pane when I'm in any module. So you can take a look at that and see all of the reports available right when you're in GP and run them from there as well. So last slide here, it does talk about how to modify existing or creating new reports. So it's really using this report builder. Fortunately, we don't have quite enough time to get through everything here. So you'll be able to check out that slide, look at those options on your own, and be able to check that out. So with that, I do want to say thanks. We're about to join you in the live Q&A. So on behalf of Dave and myself, again, thanks for voting for us. Thanks DynamicsCon for being part of, letting us be part of this. And let's switch over to answer some questions.